When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. You understand me? I was born black. I live black. And I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey, man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions asked. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
Hey, peace and power. Peace and power. Yes. I just want to be free. I'm Akimba Jodre. You know, as Malcolm said, freedom for everybody or freedom for nobody. That's the mindset. You know, appreciate everybody tapping in. That will be tapping in. This is We Charge Colonialism, media platform that uplifts the experiences of African people under colonial conditions, and things that we are doing or what we can be doing to overturn this relationship with the colonizers, whether they're Europeans who are coming into our communities or into our countries, attempting to exploit Africans of their resources and their labor, or if they're Chinese, Indian, we don't care. But we're willing to work with anybody that will work with us to overturn the system of exploitation and oppression, right? So it's about African liberation, Black liberation. And today, you know, I'm a bit frustrated because of, you know, the conversations that I'm seeing happening on media, through social media, the mainstream media platforms. And I'm not seeing a lot of discussion or talk about what's happening in Darfur. And not that there aren't discussions taking place, but I would like to see a lot more happening, a lot more organizing around what's taking place, particularly in the African diaspora, in regards to what's happening in Sudan, because Sudan already experienced the first genocide of the 21st century. And what's happening now over there is in 2023, it is looking to, again, you know, the people of Darfur or Sudan is about to experience another genocide. I mean, you can say that they're experiencing it now. There's ethnic cleansing taking place. And, you know, we don't want this to spiral too much further out of control. And I say too much further because I think that it is already spiraled out of control. The country has been in civil war since April the 15th. And the indigenous African people, I say the indigenous African people of Sudan, are being targeted by the Arab community in Sudan, who are having a conflict among themselves. So, you know, I want to get to that. I covered this story, what's happening in Sudan a few weeks ago. So I'm going to continue to uplift this because I don't want this story to get lost in the other stories and conflicts that are taking place, particularly in Palestine and with Palestine and Israel. And free Palestine. You know, I can sort of empathize with what's taking place there because as an African, you know, as a Black man, I understand settler colonialism. The Europeans are a settler colonial state here in the United States, right? and I know the masses of people don't want to come to that conclusion, but that's the reality. And I don't care if it was 200, 300 years ago. If the people who, the rightful residents of this land are still here. And if they're able to still talk about it, then we can and talk about their ancestors who experienced the genocide. Then we can continue to acknowledge that the European that's in the Americas represents a settler colonial state. So with that being said, though, I'm going to get into this story, but I want to also uplift what's happening November 10th. I'm going to share my screen. Hey, peace. Sugar in the chat, and everybody's tapping in. Oh, I forgot, some little housekeeping. Make sure you like and share this. So we can get as many people to tap in as possible. And if this is your first time coming to this channel, subscribe. Check out some of the previous videos that we have done, and continue to tap in, because we're going to have these discussions and other powerful and important discussions revolving around African people and what we have to do as as Black people to liberate ourselves, advance ourselves. Because that we charge colonialism, one thing I want to make clear is that we're totally against the colonial capitalist system, and we're not some of those people who talk about the advancements of capitalism and how people benefit. We're concerned about the lives, the advancement or benefit of a few at the expense of the many isn't something that we're advocating. So we have to develop the sort of system that isn't parasitic, that isn't going to lead to the death of millions of people, the starvation of millions of people, and so forth. Just so that a few, relatively speaking, people can, can benefit and live well. So with that being said, let me share my screen. November 10th is going to be the 60th anniversary of Malcolm X's message to the grassroots speech in Detroit. And so this November 10th, there's going to be the Malcolm X Symposium happening in Boston. Malcolm X Symposium honoring 60 years of the message to the grassroots. So honoring the 60-year anniversary of the message to the grassroots speech. And let me read some of this. It's going to be at 142 Memorial Drive at MIT. So come join us for this incredible program as we commemorate the 60th anniversary of Malcolm X's powerful message to the grassroots speech. This symposium will be a gathering of like-minded individuals who appreciate the significance of this speech and its impact on our society. During the symposium, we will delve into the historical context of the speech and explore its relevance in today's world. We will engage in thought-provoking discussions, listen to captivating speakers, and gain a deeper understanding of Malcolm X's influential message. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a social justice advocate, or simply curious about Malcolm X's impact on American society, this event is for you. Be a part of this in-person event and connect with fellow attendees who share a passion for social justice and equality. There will be plenty of soul food, sounds good, and engagement. Don't miss this opportunity to honor Malcolm X's legacy and reflect on the lasting impact of his words. Join us at the Malcolm X Symposium and be inspired. Don't miss out on this remarkable gathering. Mark your calendars and join us at the Malcolm X Symposium. All right, that's going to be powerful, man. So, if you're in the area, make sure you're there. If not, make sure you book a ticket to get there and register. Register ASAP. I'll put the link in the live chat, and I'll repost it as well. So this is where you can register, and you can also donate. It's a free event, but you can donate and support the event. So that being said, let me tap into this video. First thing I want to do is pull up this video, and then I have a couple of articles I want to look at. So the first one, this was put out by Reuters about a month ago. So I want to play this first.
Ethnically motivated attacks have killed hundreds in Sudan's West Darfur region, the United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said on Tuesday.
And in West Darfur, ethnically motivated attacks perpetrated by the RSF and allied Arab militias have resulted in the deaths of hundreds of so-called non-Arab civilians, primarily from Masalit communities.
Bloodshed, violence, and displacement have escalated in Sudan since fighting between the Sudanese army and rapid support forces erupted in April. Turk said the latest attacks had occurred mainly in El Geneina, capital of West Darfur, and Sudan's westernmost city, but also in at least 8 other locations. He said the RSF controls all but 2 localities in West Darfur.
Such developments echo a horrific past that must not be repeated.
The RSF has denied accusations that it is behind attacks on civilians and said it would bring to justice any of its soldiers if they're found to be involved.
We also see worrying signs of involvement in the conflict of militia, often affiliated along tribal or ethnic lines. Mobilization campaigns by the SAF pose a real risk of sparking intercommunal tension and triggering even further conflict between communities.
Turk also highlighted what he called an ongoing epidemic of conflict-related violence, saying his office had received credible reports of 45 incidents involving at least 95 victims, including 75 women, 1 man, and 19 children.
This is likely to be the tip of the iceberg.
The UN Refugee Agency said last week it expected more than 1.8 million people from Sudan to flee to 5 neighboring countries by the end of the year. Tensions between the army and RSF, which jointly staged a coup in 2021, erupted into fighting over a plan to integrate their forces as a part of a transition to civilian rule. While several countries have launched mediation efforts, none has succeeded in bringing a halt to the fighting.
Yeah, so and again, like that, the Reuters had put out that story, this video about a month ago. So I'm going to kind of fast forward it to where they are today. And as I mentioned before in the last video talking about this, when it comes to the RSF in the Sudanese government and their military, there's no love, or respect that I have for either of those forces or institutions or entities because of the genocide that they committed against those who are now part of the state of South Sudan. And those 9, as they mentioned in there, they said so-called, but those who are non-Arabs, who are not Arabs, right? The indigenous Africans of that land, who are still caught under the borders of the Sudan government, and those people who are residing in Darfur, those are the people who are like really experiencing this genocide and ethnic cleansing that is taking place. Now, there's other casualties, of course, who are Arabs because of this conflict that is happening between the two. And just the fact that they even, they recognize their ancestors, their Arab ancestors, right, in Africa, and still identify themselves as Arab, I think says a lot as well. So there's still like this, when we talk about settler colonialism, that's another conversation to be had. Maybe we'll do a video on that, but I want to stick to just uplifting this genocide and ethnic cleansing that is taking place in this particular video. But this is just something that we need to think about, especially like with the conflicts that are happening in other places, right? And so we have to start asking those groups of people who are asking for the support of Africans, and for the Africans who are supporting them, to get those Arabs, those Muslims to support the people who are in Sudan who are victims of this this genocide that's being committed by other Arabs, right? So we can't ignore this reality that is taking place. So let me get to this story right here that's talking about the ethnic cleansing. This was put out by colonial media, BBC. Well, we're going to use the colonial media until we can get We Charge Colonialism on the ground. You know, we'll get there one day. Pull up this story right here. Ethnic cleansing, BBC. All right, the Sudan conflict. Here we go right here. So let me get into this. Make sure I'm not muted. Ain't right. Good to go. All right, so Sudan conflict. All right. Hold on one second. Make sure I got the right story up. All right, let's go. All right, so the Sudan conflict, ethnic cleansing committed in Darfur, UK says. I mean, we don't have to wait for the colonizer to tell us either. And that's another issue, man. We always have to wait for the colonizer to acknowledge something to say that it's happening. And, you know, like this is as African people, we have to define our experiences. This is what the 1951 petition was about. We charge colonialism. The We Charge Colonialism 1951, when W.B. Du Bois, William Patterson, Paul Robeson attempted to go to the UN, right, to charge the U.S. with genocide. I'm sorry, not colonialism, with genocide. So, you know, this was African people in the United States who was describing and defining their experiences, not waiting for the European to come along and say that this is genocide, right? And so this is what we have to do, and a lot of us is still, you know, a lot of Africans are waiting for the acknowledgement of these colonizers, right, before there's a move to. And I'm not saying everybody, but you know, like, where is the outcry though from the diaspora and the other 54 African countries about what's taking place right here in Darfur, right? So the BBC has seen new evidence of brutal ethnic violence that has swept Western Sudan since fighting broke out between two rival military factions in April. Analysis of satellite and social media data reveals at least 68 villages in Darfur has been set on fire by armed militias since the civil war began. The UK Minister of Africa, Andrew Mitchell, told the BBC this bore all the hallmarks of ethnic cleansing. It is the first time the British government has used the term to describe what is happening in Sudan. The first time they used it. You see what I mean? Now everybody else is going to jump on board and begin to say it. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who leads one side in the conflict, the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, told the BBC he would cooperate with the International Criminal Court to bring those guilty to justice. This is interesting because the SAF, this is who the RSF is fighting against. The SAF, which is the SAF is the military arm of the government. You know, I guess you could say the legitimate government. And so, you know, with the RSF, they attempted to integrate them into the military, the government's military. And, you know, I guess there was an issue, whether it was resources or them just wanting to be independent. I have to do some more investigating on that rift. But the RSF is attempting to overthrow the legitimate government of Sudan. But you know, so of course, like the SAF, they like, yeah, we're going to bring them to justice, and they're going to push the blame on the RSF. But it's not far-fetched. So what's happening with the RSF, there is a sort of a vigilante group of Arabs who are they're recognized by these white bands, but they're supposed to be connected with the RSF. The RSF is disputing any connection with this group, but this group is being caught committing these acts of genocide against the indigenous African people of Sudan. And so this is the connection with the RSF right here. The RSF is denying any involvement in this genocide that's taking place. Much of the ethnic violence is blamed on militias, which are part of or affiliated to the Rapid Support Forces, the paramilitary group fighting the SAF for control of the country. I'm gonna just read this because I feel like I'm kind of still in the thunder of this story. I'm just repeating what they're saying. So the RSF has repeatedly denied any involvement in the violence in the region and has called for independent international investigation. The analysis has been carried out by the Centre for Information Resilience, a research body partly funded by the British government, which is gathering open source evidence about the fighting in Sudan. They use nasal heat recognition technology to identify fires. They look at satellite images to detect smoke and burnt out buildings. They match all that with images from the ground on social media, which are geolocated using maps and photos. The latest verified fires were in a village called Armajadi in southern Darfur, where NASA and satellite imagery showed burn scars between 18 September and 9 October. This is how the CIR established how one convoy of militias set fire to at least 9 villages on one day, August 16th. Again, as I mentioned before, too, in the last video, just to make the connection, the RSF is made up of those Janjaweed fighters, murderers who were the ones who were leading the genocide against the indigenous African people. So that's who the RSF are, so we have to make that connection. The name may have changed, but these are the same people, right? And so, when we look at these people need to be charged for genocide. They fighting to become the legitimate government. These are neither them or the legitimate government needs to be in power, or they need to make amends, not amends, but some sort of reparations or recompense for the damages, psychological, material damages that have been done to the indigenous Sudanese people and continue to be done as well. First is use nasal heat recognition technology to identify the possible location of fires. I'm going to scroll down a bit. They talk about how they're identifying the fires that have taken place. And this is the ethnic cleansing that this is how they're identifying the ethnic cleansing that is taking place. The scale of what we've been able to document is bigger than what we've ever seen before, says Ben Strick, CIR's Director of Investigations. We've documented 89 fires, which damaged 68 villages since the 15th of April, which is a huge amount. In some of these, it is small buildings that have been targeted. But in some of them, whole villages that have been wiped out. That scale is enormous when we think upon the impact on civilians. What we're seeing is a pattern of abuses, a pattern of villages being burnt, one after the other, specifically in Darfur, which is where we're seeing some of the heaviest violence outside of Khartoum. Sometimes this is part of infighting between rival Arab groups. Other times it's Arab fighters targeting non-Arabs, like the Mausalit, the largest local ethnic group centered on the capital of West Darfur, El Geneina. Amin Yakubu and his family were forced to leave his home in Darfur when Arab militias attacked. We were together one morning in my home. We just left the mosque when a rocket-propelled grenade exploded. My friend's neck was broken and he lost his life. He stepped over bodies to escape and still does not know where all his family are. He spoke to the BBC from a refuge camp in eastern Chad, which he managed to reach last month. The conflict has become an ethnic one, but everyone is equally affected. No one sleeps at night, he said. Everyone has to lie flat on the floor all night long because of the gun battles. Right now, everyone has left our little town. No one is left there as far as I know. Right? So we're seeing like how whole communities are being uprooted, Hundreds of lives, probably thousands at this time, lives have been lost as a result of this. And these is people, and you can, I mean, it's obvious the plan is to force these indigenous Africans out of the area. They don't want them there. What other reason would they be burning villages and targeting them? So, you know, ethnic cleansing is taking place. This is genocide. So even whoever wins this conflict, this civil war, there's still a problem of, you know, these people, these militias and this army as well, them even having a legitimate government, period, after the atrocities that they have committed against people who still exist. And these people are under the government, under the power and control of a genocidal government. That's a problem. 20 years, I'm going to read this part right here. It says 20 years ago, hundreds of thousands of people were killed in Darfur, hundreds of thousands, amid fighting between non-Arab rebel groups and a militia known as the Janjaweed, as I mentioned earlier, which later grew into the RSF. Some Janjaweed leaders and even the president at the time, Omar al-Bashir, have been indicted by the IEC on charges of genocide and crimes against humanity, which they have denied. So I want to go to this video. There's another video that gets into what's taking place. This video was put out a little less than a week ago. Stop sharing this. Share this. So this is getting into the conflict and the crisis and what's happening there in Darfur, and we get to see some images, man. Sometimes we have to see. I'm reading what's taking place and talking about it. But let's look at some images, man, so we can like really see the impact that this is having on the people there. Hundreds. All right, here we go. So I'm going to play half of this, about six minutes of this video.
Africa, I'm Clarisse Fortuné. Our top stories today. More than 9,000 people killed and millions displaced, and yet Sudanese face no respite from bloodshed and terror, according to the UN. 6 months of war have plunged Sudan into one of the worst humanitarian nightmares in recent history. We have a special report. The end of the state of siege in DRC has come as a relief for many in the North Kivu and Ituri provinces. We'll get some reactions from Goma. And it's fashion season on the continent. Kibera Fashion Week just ended, an opportunity for local fashionistas to showcase their favorite pieces in the country's biggest slum. Sudanese face no respite from bloodshed and terror, a statement from the United Nations as the conflict drags on. 6 months ago, a conflict erupted between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, plunging Sudan into one of the worst humanitarian nightmares in recent history. Bastien Renouille is our special correspondent and had this special access into West Darfur.
Behind me, civilians from the Masalit community are dying. I'm 30 kilometers from El Geneina, the capital of West Darfur, where the main atrocities took place during the past months. The Rapid Support Forces and local Arab militias are responsible of these killings, and I can see them a few hundred meters behind me. They are in military trucks watching the border with Chad. These members of Arab militias are targeting the Masalit community, an ethnic African tribe. They've killed hundreds, if not thousands, of men, women, and children. According to the United Nations, they even dug mass graves to bury the bodies. Here in Chad, I met with one refugee who participated in the collection of the bodies, collaborating with the Rapid Support Forces.
Every morning, we started by gathering bodies outside in the street. First, we had to count them. There were 50, 60, 70, depending on the day. It was forbidden to take photos. We could only work and nothing else. We loaded the bodies into a lorry, one on top of the other, like goods. Once there were 80 bodies in the lorry. We asked, "Are you going to bury them properly, each in a grave?" They said, "No, we're going to put them all together and cover them with soil." We asked where they were going to bury them, but they didn't want to answer.
To survive, many families have decided to escape from West Darfur and El Genina and to seek refuge here in Chad. More than 400,000 people have crossed the border behind me. More than 200,000 people are currently in the city of Adre. Among them, 85% of women and children. Here there is no fighting, they are safe, but they are still in dire need of help. In the camps, they live in makeshift shelters. They lack water and food. The healthcare system here is not strong enough to help them all. So international NGOs and the United Nations are trying to help them, but they say they lack money to do so. So they're all calling for greater international assistance to save these refugees.
And to get more on the story, I'm joined by Michael Dunford, Regional Director for Eastern Africa at the World Food Programme. Welcome. So what is the latest situation on the humanitarian ground, on the ground?
As your story has just reported, we have a catastrophe on our hands. Over 20 million people who are acutely food insecure, over 6 million people who have been displaced, both inside the country and to neighboring countries. This is a crisis inside Sudan, and it has the potential of also becoming a crisis for the region.
So they've talked about ethnic cleansing. Can you confirm? Have you seen any evidence of that?
I haven't personally. I've heard reports, and I hope in the near future there will be investigations to determine to what extent that is true. What we know, however, is that populations have been targeted. There has been deaths. There has been people who have been displaced. And we are now, as the World Food Programme and others, trying to meet the needs of the population. There are large swathes of the country that we simply cannot access, or we cannot access at the scale required. So this is a conflict that must end. International humanitarian support must be given free access to reach the populations. And then hopefully we can have a political process that will put this conflict behind us and will provide the foundations for a long-lasting peace.
So given the situation, how can the humanitarian aid be organized?
So the World Food Programme and others have capacities in country, but the situation is so complex. We don't have many more operations globally today that are as complex as the situation in Sudan. When you look at the size of the scale, the needs in the country, we are trying to reach over 7 million people, and yet we only have access to probably at best half the country. We're trying to run convoys in from the likes of Chad up from South Sudan, but each and every one of those convoys needs to be negotiated with parties to the conflict. It's hard, it's slow, and it simply is very difficult to scale up to the extent required.
So what would you say the most urgent needs are?
So the World Food Programme needs funding. With funding, we're able to procure the food and start to move it into place if we have the access and the security. That's why a cessation of hostilities by the two parties is essential at this stage. Beyond that, we'll need water, we'll need medical equipment, and this is where the entire humanitarian infrastructure can come to support the population.
Are you, World Food Programme and also the other NGOs, are you in discussions with the two protagonists? The armed forces and also the paramilitary group?
We are having to negotiate humanitarian access with both sides. We're not involved in the negotiations for the peace per se, but for the humanitarian access, absolutely. We're having to talk not only with the two sides, but with other militia groups who are playing a role in the conflict. So it's not just two parties, it's multiple parties now. And as I said at the beginning, it's conflict inside the country and repercussions in the neighboring countries as well.
Michael Dunford from the World Food Programme, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One thing I'm trying to figure out, and maybe somebody can help. I might be seeing this wrong, but if how do you even sit down and negotiate with people who are committing genocide? I mean, like the Nazis. Like that's like sitting down with the Nazis. Even okay, they did what they did to Hitler, take out the leadership, but the organization itself is still is able to exist and have influence and control in Germany. Like that wouldn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense now with the government that's in power and this other group, right, that's in conflict, the RSF that's in conflict and looking to seize power. They were just sitting down, these two terrorist organizations, and people probably won't like me calling it what they are, but these two terrorist organizations recently sat down and had a conversation. I'm sorry, not a conversation. Well, yeah, I guess you could say, but we're negotiating at the negotiation table, and that fell through. There's a short story on that. I'll share my screen and talk about that in a minute. But even looking at that video right there, man, it's just heart wrenching. Again, just like looking at the images and seeing the people who are suffering as a result of what's taking place. These are our brothers and sisters that don't even have a dog in this fight, right? A bone in this fight, whatever that saying is, right? But are victims of these two, groups of settlers that shouldn't even be there, shouldn't even have the power and control over that land as they do. So let me get into this. This last article. It's really short. Sudan conflict, RSF takes control of Nyala and Darfur, and this came out today, October 26th. The paramilitary rapid supporting force RSF has seized control of Sudan's second largest city, Nyala, from the army after months of fighting. Several sources had told the BBC. One eyewitness said residents were celebrating because they hoped it meant an end to the violence. The fighting has forced more than 670,000 people to flee their homes. The city hospitals have been destroyed and bodies are said to be lining the streets. The major advance for the RSF comes as the two warring sides were set to resume peace talks in Saudi Arabia. The army has not commented on its defeat in Nyala. You see, like in Saudi Arabia, this is the Arabs trying to come together, right, and settle this dispute among themselves, right? So they're not having this meeting in France, not having this meeting in Britain, or any other European country. They're going to Saudi Arabia, speaking among themselves. The army has not commented on its defeat in Nyala. Nyala, capital of South Darfur State, is a strategic city connecting Sudan with Central African Republic. The RSF originated in Darfur and has been accused of atrocities against non-Arabic groups in the region during this year's conflict. High-ranking army generals, including the head of the militia in Nyala, were killed in battle a few weeks ago. RSF second in command, Abdurrahim Daglo, who was sanctioned by the U.S. for his alleged role in ethnic cleansing in West Darfur, led the capture of Nyala. You see, these people in positions of power, leading, these are murderers. These are people who led up genocides that we're talking about, that are fighting to get in the position of power. Nobody, no African should recognize any of these. Anybody, no one should recognize these people, and they should be brought to justice. Eyewitnesses have reported that RSF fighters have been looting and storming civilian houses since they seized the city. Emergency, a medical organization that provides treatment to victims of war, says that Sudanese staff members were taken from a pediatric center in Nyala and arrested by the RSF. In June, the RSF captured Dafag, a small town on the border, with a car which is believed to be a key area for the supply chain. The United Arab Emirates has been accused of supplying weapons to the RSF through CAR, which is the Central African Republic, in Chad's Dafag. it has denied the accusations. Yeah, I bet. I don't believe you. I know it. So you see, like outside support and help, like where are they getting the resources from? Where are they getting this funding from? Right? How are they sustaining any type of economy? You know, who is doing business with these people? These are the things that we have to ask ourselves as well. We have to make it a lot more difficult for these people to operate, and for any of them, in my honest, my opinion about the current government of Sudan, I don't even think that they should even be recognized, as well as the RSF. And if the RSF was to seize power, they definitely, need to be brought to justice for what they have done to the indigenous African people. That's the story. It's a good question, right? And I want to do some more research on this because it probably goes beyond them just being Muslim brothers and sisters, right? Maybe there's an economic advantage that the UAE gets from the Janjaweed. Yeah, I guess you can call them that, but the RSF come into power, right? There may be some sort of economic relationship because there's resources in Sudan. There's minerals in Sudan. There's oil and there's land. So let me do some research on that. I'm gonna do my due diligence and maybe we'll discuss that. But that would be conjecture right now as far as what they would get out of it. Because why wouldn't they support even the government, right? Why would they support the RSF? So I appreciate the question. Let me get into that. So I appreciate everybody for tapping in too. Again, I want to uplift this particular story. I'm gonna continue to look at what's happening in Darfur, in Sudan, so that we don't have what took place at the turn of the century, where hundreds of thousands of African people were murdered, were taken off the planet, and also had to relocate as a result of what was taking place in that country. And even today, you have hundreds of thousands and millions of people who are having to relocate as a result of this civil conflict, a conflict that they're not even involved in, right? But are becoming victims, right? What's that term that they have? The casualty, collateral damage, I guess. And this is something that we can have to continue to have discussions about. So again, people who talk about African internationalism, Pan-Africanism, whether you're on the continent and the diaspora, we have to recognize the atrocities that are happening in Africa and not get sidetracked or distracted by the conflicts that are happening with other people in other places, right? And we can support those other, those other atrocities. We can support those and uplift those, but it can't be at the expense of African people. This is something that happens too often. We put ourselves second. That should never happen. We should never put ourselves second. We should always put ourselves first and put our conflicts first and our problems first. And then if we can help other people and unite with other people to solve all of our problems, then that's something that we sit down and we talk about. But it can't be one over the other. Marcus Garvey will be so disappointed with us for that. So again, appreciate everybody for tapping in. This is We Charge Colonialism. Again, make sure you click on that link that's in the live chat and register for the Malcolm X Symposium happening November 10th. Tap in tomorrow. I'm going to be here about 1 o'clock to speak on the Sahel. Actually, I interviewed a few people who are on the ground in Burkina Faso So this is a pre-recorded discussion that I had with them. So, tap in tomorrow and check that out. And we'll also be back on Saturday at 10 a.m. For our book club as we continue to read Set the World on Fire. So until next time, man, appreciate y'all. Black power, continue to struggle for liberation in colonialism, in capitalism. Peace.